Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again, it is Sunday, and that means it's time for the Texas Gun Vault Poll Question of the Week, a weekly vlog that I put out where I ask you as my viewers and subscribers about something that deals with guns, gun culture, politics, current events, the news, or something fun like EDC that I want to get your thoughts and opinions on. And this week's question is of a very serious nature. Now, I know if you're watching my channel, you probably watch a lot of other firearms channels and are very aware of what is going on right now in our country when it comes to the FRT triggers, or the force reset triggers, and some actions that are being taken by the ATF, and more specifically from buyers of a very specific person on Gunbroker. But to catch you up to speed on all that is going on, if you don't know what I'm talking about, right now the ATF seems to be going door to door to find people that bought these force reset triggers that they claim are machine guns. And when they bought these triggers, which are just drop-in trigger modules for AR-15s, they were completely legal. Now, the ATF apparently has not come with any warrants for any of these people, and it appears that most of the information they have is either from the company that made them, Rare Breed, or from a very specific seller on Gunbroker. And so far, many of these unannounced visits have gone a number of different ways, and many of the YouTube channels that deal with the legality of firearms, some of them are attorneys, some of them are gun rights organizations, have all been giving advice on what you should do. Now, of course, it is very important that you make your own decision, and I want to give a disclaimer on this one. I am not an attorney. I'm not an attorney spokesman. So if you have any questions about the legality of any of this and what you should do, you should seek out the professional opinion of an attorney. I'm just going to give you guys my personal opinions on all of this and read what you guys have to say. Now, I want to also say that I support your rights to do whatever it is you want. You guys know that I am pretty much a Second Amendment absolutist. I think the NFA is unconstitutional. I think we should be able to purchase machine guns without having to go through any registration or tax stamp or any of that nonsense. But that's not the world that we live in. I also believe in Sun Tzu's The Art of War, that every battle is won or lost before they are ever fought. And sometimes you have to play chess and not checkers. Not every battle can be won through brute force. Sometimes you have to be smart. And sometimes when it comes to the way that lawfare is exercised here in the United States, you have to be smart about how you go about things. Sometimes you have to decide, is this the hill worth dying on? Is this the thing that I want to go down in a blaze of glory defending? Or maybe this is not a battle worth having, because the true battle is in the future. Now, I know a lot of people are going to have varying opinions on this, so I ask that in the comments of this video that you are respectful of anyone else who feels differently than you do. That is very important, that we remain civil. We have to be united in our front. Obviously, I know most of us are going to be opposed to all of this, but how we go about fighting this and how we go about handling this might have to be made on an individual level, and you have to know what is best for you. So with all of that said, let's dive right into this week's poll question. This week's question is of a very serious nature. We have been made aware of the ATF knocking on people's doors who have bought Rare Breed FRT triggers and or solvent traps from a various gunbroker seller or dealer who appears to have been raided in the past. None of the interactions with the ATF agents appear to have been accompanied by a warrant. No one has been arrested, and the interactions all have been varied in nature. Some people have provided evidence of the item's destruction, some have relinquished possession, some have said come back with a warrant, and some have said nothing and closed the door. Whether or not you have currently, have ever, or never owned one of these items, have you spent time thinking about how your interaction with an ATF agent would go in a circumstance like this? If so, what would you plan on doing or saying? Note, all of these responses are contingent upon the agents not having a warrant and only there to ask questions. And of course, the reason I put that little note at the bottom is that if they have a warrant, they are going to execute that search warrant, and the best thing you can do is just hang back and let them do what they're going to do. Of course, call an attorney, but if that warrant is there, there is nothing you can do to stop them, and you should not impede with that investigation. But if they don't have a warrant, there is absolutely nothing they can do. Remember, all they can do is ask questions, and you always have a right to say nothing. As they say, you have the right to remain silent, even if you are not guilty of anything. And I think the reason that this is such an important question for all of us to ask is I think we all know this is probably only the first step in a much bigger plan. Yeah, right now it's the FRT triggers and some of these solvent traps. And I know many of you bought when they were legal, but unfortunately the regulations or the opinions have changed. Maybe there hasn't been any law passed to deal with these, but the ATF says they're illegal and they're coming to your door to try to see if you will relinquish possession. But without the warrant, they can't do anything. Now, another thing to remember is that it is allowed by the federal government for them to lie to you, but it is illegal for you to lie to them. So that's why lawyers always say the best thing you can do with any interaction with the police is not say anything, especially if they don't have a warrant. You are under no obligation to say anything to them about anything. If they don't have the warrant, all they can do is ask questions. You don't have to answer, and they can just simply go away. You are allowed to close the door. But also remember, you catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar. And I know that there are probably many ATF agents out there that are being told to go enforce this edict and this order, and they don't really want to do it because after all, they want to go home to their families, and they might even think this is completely unconstitutional as well. But they're just following orders. Now, I have problems with that myself, but they're not really looking for a confrontation. And I know that many of them might be on edge because they know eventually they might go to someone's house, or maybe someone that lives in the backwater of some very rural area that might not take kindly to a bunch of feds coming on their property. And of course, they don't want to have to engage, and they understand that their life might be in danger. So what I'm going to say before any of this is my personal opinion is if you do answer the door and interact with them, be professional. You can be nice, but you can also shut up. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to be mean to them. You don't have to call them names. Remember, you can always be the better man. If they're there at your door, you're not going to win any arguments with them. The only thing you can do is escalate the situation. You want to de-escalate, even if they're trying to escalate it, regardless of what they are saying. Be the bigger person. Just not say anything, politely close the door, and tell them that you have nothing to say or talk to your lawyer. But with all of that said, let's see what you guys said with this week's results. With a measly 668 votes this week, we have I would relinquish possession of all the items if I own them, 2%. I have destroyed the item and give documentation of the proof, 2%. I would say I will make no statement until I speak with a lawyer, 38%. Not answer the door, say nothing, or tell them to leave, 54%. And something else, explain in the comments. Now, I was actually a little bit surprised by this because the people that I do know that have owned these FRT triggers have really not been that happy with them. A lot of times they say they're really fidgety. And I would assume that if you have a problem with the product, now granted, I understand these products probably cost a lot of money, and if you relinquish them, you're just essentially handing over hundreds of dollars, and that probably ticks a lot of people off. But I think from a mechanical and function standpoint, many people might not be upset with having to relinquish them because, as I said, I think they're more of a gimmick than anything else. The only thing I would understand is being upset about the financial loss. But as I said, many of the lawyer or the legal types on YouTube are saying the best course of action is to contact an attorney to destroy the trigger. If you have one, show documentation, let them hold on to that documentation, or if the ATF comes unexpectedly, relinquish possession of that trigger. That's what their advice is. Now, they're not saying that is the right thing to do from a constitutional standpoint. They're just saying that for your personal safety safety and the legalities of having to fight it, it's probably the easiest course of action. But I also understand why many people, and this is obvious from the results of this poll, don't want to do that because they feel like their rights are being violated. And I absolutely agree that that is the case. And to paraphrase and kind of use a gun analogy from a very famous quote from World War II, where they talked about coming for different types of people, but I'll say it in regards to different types of firearms. You know, first they came for the bump stocks, and I didn't speak up because I didn't have a bump stock. Then they came for the FRT triggers, and I didn't say anything, and I didn't speak up because I didn't have an FRT trigger. Then they came for the solvent traps, and I didn't speak up because I didn't have a solvent trap. Then they came for the AR-15s and the assault weapons, and I didn't speak up because I didn't have an assault weapon. And then they came for every other gun, and there was nobody left to speak up for me. Well, I understand that this is that slippery slope. This is the thing that we want to avoid. We want to put the kibosh on right now. We want to stop it. And where we can do that will be in the courts. Right now, as you know, we are in a post-Supreme Court Bruin decision. And hopefully, some of these district and appellate courts are going to put an end to this. And maybe, as I said, this is not the hill for you to die on. But I understand why some people might think it is. But it looks like a lot of people would probably do the more professional thing and exercise your rights to not say anything. Remember, if you have an interaction with law enforcement of any kind, this is what I recommend to everybody from a traffic stop to a potential ATF investigation. Be polite. Be professional. You're not going to win any arguments with them. All you're going to do is escalate the situation. Show law enforcement, whether you like them or not, whether you think they are there for the right reason or not. Just simply show them respect. You don't have to say anything and you don't have to be mean. Make them the bad guys, not you. Don't escalate it and give them any reason to do anything more than they have to. But let's go through each one of these and I'll give you guys my personal opinions. I would relinquish possession of the items if I own them. Now this is probably the safest way to go, especially if they have documentation that you purchased it. Now, I know that here in Texas we have a website called Texas Gun Trader where people can buy and sell privately firearms, accessories, components, and so forth. And I have seen these FRT triggers on there, which means these people bought them. Maybe they didn't like them. They're like, oh man, this thing's a piece of junk. I can't get it to run right. But it's worth a lot of money to a lot of people, so I'll sell it. So maybe you bought one and sold it a while ago before all of this happened, and you have to tell them, I don't have it anymore, nor do you have proof of its destruction. I guess just being honest with them would be the best course of action. But if you're sure that they know you have it, well, maybe this might be the way to go. It's only a trigger. They're not coming for the AR-15 right now. But if you want to avoid any hassle, that might be the way to go. Personally, it's not the way that I would go, but remember, lying to law enforcement is a crime. They can lie to you, you can't lie to them. So you don't have to say anything whatsoever, especially, and I feel sorry for those that may have bought these in the past and went, it's a piece of junk, or I don't want it, and ended up selling it, because what are you going to do now? There's documentation that you bought it, but you sold it in a private sale. How do you prove that? I don't really know. Then we have, I have destroyed the item and give documentation of the proof. Only 2% here, and of course this is something that many of those legal scholars are saying to do. Therefore, you have gotten rid of this, whatever the ATF thinks is contraband, so you are not in possession of it. You have documentation that you did destroy it. And they also recommend, as I said, that your lawyer keeps that information off-site and simply be ready to hand them maybe your attorney's card and say, contact my attorney, and he can provide all of the information that you will need regarding the destruction of this trigger. Next up we have, I would say I will make no statement until I speak with a lawyer. Remember, even if a policeman comes to your door and says, hey, we are investigating some guy down the street. Remember, they can lie to you and not be telling you the truth. My general thing is, do not speak with law enforcement under any circumstances for any reason. And no, it's not the whole snitches get stitches thing. It's just that you don't really know what their real motivation is. They can come to you and say, hey, we're investigating this guy down the street. And what they're really trying to do is get a reason to come in your house. But they don't have a warrant. So if you invite them into your house, then they can kind of do a cursory search. They can look around. If they see anything, now they have probable cause. cause. The best advice is don't say anything whatsoever. I know that in the pro-gun world, and especially in the conservative circles that many of us run in, a lot of people worship law enforcement for some reason. And I do have to say, they do a lot of good. After all, sometimes they are that last line of defense before society completely collapses. But there are a lot of bad law enforcement officers, and a lot of these guys are just trying to do a job. Maybe they're not thinking about, oh my God, I'm going to completely ruin this person's life for no reason, but I get to go home to my family. They don't really care about you. They might act like they care about you, but they really don't. Take a look at what happened in Uvalde. We all saw all those law enforcement officers at that school, and nobody did anything. Why? Because none of them want to die. They weren't there to protect those children, and now they've all circled the wagons to protect themselves. They have no obligation to protect you, so you have no obligation to help them. Now, I am not anti-law enforcement. I think that they serve a very important role in our society, and I am glad that they are there. But also, they're in many cases trying to entrap people. So my best advice is to never talk to them, even if it is something very innocuous, unless they have a warrant. You don't have to speak with them. But it's very important too that you are polite, but also tell them that I exercise my right to not say anything until I speak with an attorney, because an attorney will always guide you in the right direction. And if the law enforcement officers are on some type of fishing expedition, well, once they realize that you're not going to talk to them before you talk to an attorney, often they're just going to back off, because they now know if they get any information after that point, well, it might not be admissible if it is part of an investigation. Then we have not answer the door, say nothing, or tell them to leave. And this got the majority, 54%. I also think this is a safe way of going. It's also a professional way of going. You avoid conflict. You avoid confrontation. But just remember, if they don't have a warrant, they can't come into your house. Now, does this mean in the future a judge won't sign off on a warrant? Well, absolutely not. But it's important to realize you don't have to talk to them. You don't have to answer the door. And this one avoids all of those other issues. Then you can handle that situation afterwards however you want. My personal belief is the ATF does not believe that they could win in a court of law when it comes to the legalities of this trigger, or in their opinion, what is the illegality of the trigger, because a clear reading and definition of the rule of law when it comes to what a machine gun is definitely excludes these FRT triggers. And that's why I think they're not really going for a warrant, because if they go for a warrant, they find one and they arrest somebody for it, then they have to prove in court that it really is a machine gun, and they might lose, and then all of this goes out the window. So I think they're trying to play it safe as well. And then finally, we have something else explain in the comments. So overall, it really made me happy to see that a lot of people are not going to talk to them and hopefully are going to be professional and polite. Remember, they're just doing their job. They don't want to get hurt. They don't want to hurt you. But also, this is unconstitutional, so you can avoid interacting with them completely. So if they don't have a warrant, you don't have to talk to them. Remember, all of your other constitutional rights are in play. And I believe that many of those officers are going to respect that. But the most important thing is do not escalate the situation. Don't get into an argument with them. Don't call them names. Don't say that they are infringing upon your rights. Just be polite. Say, I am not comfortable speaking with you until I get legal counsel and find out how I can best serve you in this investigation. Because your attorney might say, just shut up. But always say, you need to talk to my attorney, or I'm not going to speak to you before I talk to legal counsel. And I think that goes for almost anything. And always remember to say, I do not give consent to search my home or my car. Make sure that is very, very clear. And that's all I have to say on that. And remember, I am not an attorney, so don't take anything I say as legal advice. So with all that said, let's dive right into this week's top rated comments and see what you guys had to say. With the top-rated comment of the week, we have War Machine 13, who says, "This doesn't apply to me, but in general, I don't answer the door unless I know you. Also, if I know you, then you know to let me know before coming. Otherwise, if you are at my door, you aren't welcome and are trespassing. Just how I am, and think it's safer that way." And I completely agree. That is the best way. As I always talk about when it comes to personal defense, the best way to win a gunfight is not be in a gunfight. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get into a gunfight with any feds or ATF agents, but generally what that means is if you avoid conflict, well, you've won the battle. And I think that's probably the best way. You don't have to answer the door. They can't come into your house unless they have a warrant. Now, if they have a warrant, just stay back and let them do their thing. But if they're there just knocking on the door without a warrant, you don't have to answer. Then, my good friend Matt Moore says, "Be polite. Tell them you refuse to give consent or answer any questions without legal counsel, and immediately call an attorney." And right there, that is the best piece of advice, and that should have been the top-rated comment of the week, because I wholeheartedly agree 100%. And this is where I think having a personal attorney on retainer, or having one of those gun shield law things, I think different states have them, where you can pay a monthly or yearly fee, and you have an attorney that you can call 24 hours a day regarding anything firearms related. I think those types of insurance policies are awesome. Then we have Alan Toon, who says, "I spoke with a retired ATF agent on a similar subject, and he said, in those circumstances, say, I don't have it anymore, and then exercise your rights under Miranda v. Arizona." And that's also great advice, especially if you don't have it anymore. Just remember, lying to law enforcement is a crime. So if you lie to them and they find out later, you can be charged. But if you don't say anything to them and they find out later, you can't be charged with that whole lying to a federal officer thing, which I think is really stupid. It's not right. They can lie to you, but you can't lie to them. So just keep your mouth shut, and they will try to twist anything you say against you. Just keep your mouth shut. It doesn't matter what the investigation is. Don't talk to them any more than you have to, even if it's just a traffic ticket. Then we have Alan P., who says, "This is one scenario I have paid a yearly fee for a U.S. Law Shield to handle. No search warrant, no open door, and talk to my attorney." And once again, just like my good friend Matt, I think that is some of the best advice that we can get. And then finally, we have my good friend Joe Morgan, who says, "Even if you do what the Federalist goons want, they would still have you watched and possibly try to charge you with something anyway. Attorney will keep your best chance in play." And once again, get an attorney. Just go get one of those U.S. Law Shields. I know in Texas we have something, I think it's called Texas Law Shield. Anyway, I'm a member of it, and I have my card with me all the time. So if I ever have an issue, I can call them up 24 hours a day. And this can be in regards to anything firearms related, or if you have to use your firearm in self-defense, they'll be there for you. If you have any questions about a law enforcement interaction, they are there for you and will advise you, and they will send out an attorney. I think it is some of the best money that you could spend, and many times these are very affordable. So that's the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week, a very serious question that I think all of us need to be asking ourselves, because right now it seems like the world is crazy and things are escalating. It's FRT triggers and solvent traps now, but could it be AR-15s in the future? Could it be just standard pistols? One day, could it even be that single shot shotgun? Well, who knows? But it's something that I think we all need to think about and decide where we stand and if it's a hill we're willing to die on. So as I said, that's the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. Please have a civil dialogue in the comments section below. I know this can be a very divisive topic, especially for many Second Amendment supporters. Some people are going to be absolutists and say you have to fight back, and other people are saying I'll just give them the trigger because the trigger honestly sucks and doesn't work very well at all anyway. So remember, we're all on the same team. We're just here to have a good discussion. And if you want to participate in next week's poll, please go to the community tab of my YouTube channel. I will also post a link in the description below. Go over there, see what the poll is, vote, comment, and like other people's comments so we can get the top-rated comments of the week. So let me know what you think in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for watching.